Welcome back to Scary Show. Tonight's story was sent to us by a woman named Claire Alderman from a small town in eastern Tennessee called Harrow Creek. She sent it as a series of voice memos recorded over the span of 6 days, and she asked us specifically not to use her real last name. We agreed. After listening to all of it, after transcribing every single word, every whispered breath, every moment where the recording just goes quiet for too long, we understood why. Claire says she moved to Harrow Creek after her divorce to start over. She found a rental house on the edge of town, cheap, quiet, surrounded by forest. Her landlord told her the previous tenant had moved out unexpectedly. Said the woman had taken a job in another state. Said it real fast like he'd rehearsed it. What Claire didn't know, what nobody thought to tell her, was that the previous tenant hadn't moved to another state. She hadn't moved anywhere at all. This is Claire's story, and I want you to know something before we begin. At the very end of the final voice memo, right before the recording cuts out completely, you can hear something in the background. Something that shouldn't be there. Something that sounds like it's standing right behind her. I'll let you decide what it is. The first voice memo is dated a Tuesday in late October. Claire sounds calm. A little tired, maybe, but calm. She's just finished moving in, and she's sitting on the floor of the living room because the movers won't bring the furniture until Thursday. She's eating takeout from a Chinese place in town and telling herself this is fine. That starting over is supposed to feel a little hollow at first. That the hollow feeling is just space waiting to be filled with something better. She says the house smells like cedar and something floral, like an old candle someone burned down to nothing. She says the trees outside the living room window are beautiful, even stripped down in the fall. She calls the house cozy. She calls Harrow Creek quiet. She says, "I think I'm going to be okay here." By Friday, she wasn't so sure. It matters quite a bit. Harrow Creek sits in a long, narrow valley between two ridgelines in the Cumberland Plateau region of eastern Tennessee. Population around 2,000, give or take. One main street with a diner, a hardware store, a pharmacy that doubles as the town's only gift shop, a Baptist church on one end and a volunteer fire station on the other. The kind of town where everybody knows everybody, and newcomers get looked at a little sideways for the first 6 months until they've proven they're the staying kind. The surrounding landscape is dense forest. Old-growth hardwood, mostly, oak and hickory and tulip poplar, with creek hollows running through the ridges like dark fingers. The kind of forest that feels ancient, that feels, on certain mornings when the fog sits low and heavy, like it's been there so long it has opinions. Claire's rental house sat about a quarter-mile outside of town, on a gravel road called Sutter Lane. It was a one-story craftsman-style house, maybe 80 years old, with a covered front porch and a detached garage and a backyard that ran straight into the tree line. The landlord was a man named Gary Pruett who drove a white pickup and wore the same green flannel jacket every time Claire saw him. He'd been friendly enough when they signed the lease. Asked about her work, she was a freelance medical transcriptionist, worked from home. Told her the cell service was decent, but the internet required a satellite dish, which he'd had installed before she moved in. He mentioned the previous tenant exactly once during that first meeting, and only because Claire asked directly. She'd noticed some things had been left behind. A half-burned candle on the kitchen windowsill. A wool cardigan hanging on a hook by the back door. A pair of reading glasses on the bathroom counter. Small things easy to overlook, but Claire noticed them and asked who'd lived here before. Gary said her name was Marla Foss. Said she'd been a quiet woman, kept to herself, lived alone. Said she'd left in a hurry because of a family situation, and hadn't come back for her things. Said Claire was welcome to toss whatever she didn't want. And then he changed the subject. Fast. Smooth. The way someone changes a subject when they've been waiting for you to ask so they can get it over with. Claire didn't push. She had too many boxes to unpack and too many of her own problems to spend much time thinking about Marla Foss's cardigan hanging by the back door. She left it there, actually. She'd revisit that decision later. The first thing that happened was the smell. Claire mentions it in her second voice memo, recorded Wednesday morning. She walked through the house trying to find the source. Even went down to the crawl space access panel in the hallway closet. The The smell was gone by Thursday, the smell was gone. And the furniture had arrived. Claire was busy arranging things, and she almost forgot about it entirely. Almost. Thursday night, around 11 o'clock, she was sitting at her desk. It was a quiet night, cold. The wind was moving through the trees outside, and she could hear the branches tapping against the side of the house. Now and then, a soft, irregular knocking that she'd already started to tune out. She went to refill her water glass in the kitchen. As she passed through the hallway, she glanced toward the back door. The cardigan was gone. She stood there for a full 10 seconds. She said, almost positive she hadn't moved it herself. She was almost positive she hadn't, but she searched the house anyway. Went through every room, every closet. Checked to make sure the back door was locked. It was, and the windows were latched, they were. She went back to work. She finished her transcription at 1 in the morning and went to bed. She didn't sleep well. She doesn't say why. Just says she kept waking up feeling like she'd heard something. But when she lay still and listened, the house was always quiet. Only the wind and the trees and the occasional distant sound of a vehicle passing on the main road, far enough away that it sounded like a sigh. Friday is when things begin to move faster. She's recording the third voice memo in the kitchen in the morning, coffee in hand, and her voice sounds different. Less settled than Tuesday. Still conversational, but there's a careful quality to it. Like she's choosing her words more deliberately than usual. Like she's talking herself into feeling normal. She tells us about Deb. Deb was the woman who ran the diner on Main Street, Harrow Creek's only real gathering point for local conversation. Claire had gone in for breakfast on Friday morning, partly for the eggs and partly because she'd been alone in the house for 4 days and was starting to feel the particular weight of sustained silence that only people who live alone truly understand. Deb was mid-50s, broad-shouldered, the kind of warmth that comes from years of feeding people and listening to their problems. She knew immediately that Claire was the one who'd moved into the house on Sutter Lane. Small town. Word travels. They talked while Claire ate her eggs, and at some point petty. Claire isn't sure exactly how it came up. Marla Foss's name surfaced. Deb went quiet when she heard it. Not dramatically, not movie villain quiet, but the specific quiet of someone who has to decide in real time how much of the truth to share. She said Marla had been a regular. Used to come in every morning for coffee and a biscuit. Said she'd been a perfectly pleasant woman, mid-40s, retired schoolteacher. Moved to Harrow Creek about 4 years ago after her husband passed. Looking for the same kind of fresh start Claire was looking for. Claire asked what had happened to her. And Deb refilled her coffee cup, took a breath and said, "Honey, I don't know exactly. What I know is that she started coming in less and less about 6 months before she left. She started coming in less and less about 6 months before she left. And the last few times she did come in, she didn't look right. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping, like she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. And she kept saying things that didn't quite make sense. And Deb said very quietly, she kept saying there was someone in her house. Said she could hear someone moving around at night. Said she found things moved, rearranged. She thought someone was getting in while she slept." Claire set her fork down. Deb said she told Marla to call the sheriff, and Marla said she had, twice, and both times they'd come out and found nothing. No signs of entry, no evidence of anyone. The last time I saw her, she came in looking like a ghost of herself. Sat at that stool right there and just stared at her coffee. And before she left, she said something I've thought about ever since. She said, "The worst part isn't hearing it at night, Deb. The worst part is that I've started recognizing the sounds." Claire drove home from the diner on Friday morning with Deb's words sitting in her chest like cold water. She told herself Marla had probably had a mental health crisis. Told herself isolation could do terrible things to a person's mind. Told herself the house was fine, the house was just an old house in a quiet town, and she was going to be okay. She parked in the driveway, walked up the porch steps, and unlocked the front door. And stopped. The cardigan was hanging on the hook by the back door again. She doesn't describe her exact reaction in the voice memo. She skips past it, actually, which tells you something. Sometimes the most frightening moments are the ones people can't bring themselves to narrate directly. She just says, "The cardigan was back. I don't know how to explain that. I don't have an explanation for that." She called Gary Pruett. He answered on the third ring, and she could hear road noise behind him like he was driving. She told him about the cardigan, and he was quiet for a moment, and then he said something that made her grip the phone harder. He said, "I thought I cleared everything out of there." Not, "That's strange, are you sure?" Not, "Maybe you moved it yourself and forgot?" He said, "I thought I cleared everything out of there," which implied that someone, at some point, had tried to remove Marla Foss's belongings from that house. She asked him what he meant. He said the previous tenant had left quickly, and he'd gone through the house to clear out anything she'd left behind before Claire moved in. Said he must have missed the cardigan. She asked why Marla had left so suddenly. Not the rehearsed version he'd given her before. The real one. Long silence. "Look," Gary finally said, "Marla had a hard time out there. She let her imagination get the better of her. Convinced herself of things that weren't true. I don't want to say more than that because it's not really my story to tell. She's fine. She's living with her sister in Knoxville. She's fine." Claire asked for the sister's name or a way to reach Marla. Gary said he didn't have that information. Claire said, "Gary, where did the cardigan come from? If you cleared the house before I moved in, and the cardigan wasn't there when I arrived and now it's back, I probably just missed it. Old houses have hooks and corners everywhere. Easy to miss something." Claire hung up and stood in her kitchen for a long time, looking at the cardigan. Then she took it off the hook, walked it out to the trash can at the end of the driveway, and dropped it in. She went back inside and locked the back door and every window in the house. That night, she heard it for the first time. She'd gone to bed around 10, which was early for her, because she was tired in the particular way that fear makes you tired. Not sleepy, exactly, but depleted, which was not the same as the usual kind of tired, but more like the aftermath of a battle. Wrung out. She lay in the dark and listened to the house and the wind and the distant trees, and eventually the exhaustion won and she drifted off. She woke up at 2:47 in the morning. She knows the exact time because she looked at her phone the moment her eyes opened, which she now believes was because some part of her brain had already registered the sound before the conscious part of her caught up. The sound was footsteps. Slow, soft footsteps. From the hallway. She describes them with a precision that is deeply unsettling. She says they were not heavy, not loud. Not the stomping, dramatic footsteps of a movie intruder. They were careful, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that belong to someone who knows the floor plan of a house and knows which boards creak and is specifically avoiding them. She lay completely still in the darkness, phone clutched in both hands, and she listened. The footsteps went from the hallway to the kitchen. She could trace the route by the sounds, the slight change in acoustics as the footfalls moved from the hardwood hallway to the tile kitchen floor. Then they stopped. 20 seconds. 30. Full minute. Then the footsteps came back down the hallway. Slow, careful, pausing just outside her bedroom door. She said later that those seconds outside her bedroom door, she can't tell you how many seconds it was. It could have been 15, it could have been 2 minutes, were the most frightening moments of her life. Not because of anything that happened, but because of the quality of the silence just on the other side of the door. That's the word she uses. The silence had a presence. And then the footsteps continued, down the hallway to the living room, and then nothing. She did not get up. She did not call 911. She lay in her bed with every light on, staring at the ceiling, phone in her hands, until 6 in the morning when the sky outside her window began to go pale gray. Then she got up, went through every room in the house, and found exactly what the sheriff had found when Marla Foss called them. Nothing. Every door locked. Every window latched. No sign of entry. No footprints on the kitchen tile. No sign that anyone had been there at all. She sat on the couch in the early morning light and recorded the 4th voice memo. And her voice in this one is different from all the others. Flat. Controlled. The voice of someone who has had a very long night and is now in the phase that comes after fear. The strange clear calm of exhaustion and resolve. She says, Saturday morning, she drove to the Harrow Creek Town Hall, which was really just 2 rooms above the pharmacy, and asked to see property records for the house on Sutter Lane. The woman at the desk, a small elderly woman named Phyllis with reading glasses on a beaded chain, seemed surprised but not opposed to helping. If you ask nicely and you're not from the county, you generally get what you want. The records went back to 1961, when the house was built by a man named Earl Sutton, hence the road name, Claire assumed. Earl and his wife Ruth had lived there until 1987, when Earl died and Ruth moved to an assisted living facility in Chattanooga. The house was subsequently rented out by the Sutton estate and later purchased by Gary Pruett in 2009. Gary had rented it to 4 tenants since then. The first was a young couple who lived there from 2009 to 2011. They left, according to the records, without much documentation of why. The second was a man named Thomas Greer, solo occupant, 2012 to 2013. 11 months. The third was a woman named Janet Colley, 2015 to 2016. 8 months. And then Marla Foss, 2020 to earlier this year. 3.5 years, which was the longest any of Gary's tenants had stayed. Claire wrote all of this down and thanked Phyllis and started to leave. And then Phyllis said something. She said, "You know, I've lived in this town my whole life. I knew Earl and Ruth Sutton for years before he passed. Although," she paused and took her glasses off and polished them in that way elderly people do when they're deciding something. People used to say some things about that house even back then. Even when the Suttons were living there. Claire asked what kind of things. Phyllis said Ruth Sutton used to complain that the house never felt quite empty, even when it was. That she'd always felt like there was someone else in the rooms with her, just slightly out of view. Earl had laughed it off, said Ruth had an overactive imagination. Ruth had disagreed, strongly. Phyllis put her glasses back on and smiled a thin, polite smile and said, "I hope you're settling in all right, dear." That night, Claire made a decision. She set up her phone on a small tripod on the nightstand, camera facing the bedroom door, and she started an audio recording on her laptop, which she placed on the hallway floor just outside her room. Both devices set to record continuously. If anything moved through that hallway again, she was going to have proof of it. She lay in her bed in the dark and waited. She fell asleep sometime after midnight. She woke up at 3:14. No footsteps this time. Instead, there was a sound from somewhere deeper in the house. Something she described as a low, resonant hum. Not mechanical, not the refrigerator, not the furnace, but organic. But not quite a voice. Not quite human enough to be a voice. But organic. It lasted about 40 seconds, and then it stopped. She lay there and her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat, and she told herself very firmly, in the way you talk to yourself when panic is right at the edge, "You are staying in this bed. You are not moving. You are staying in this bed." She stayed in her bed. In the morning, she checked the recordings. The phone video showed nothing. Her bedroom door stayed closed all night, the hallway behind it dark and still. But when she opened the laptop and scrolled through the audio file, she found it. 3 hours and 14 minutes in, right when she'd woken up. The hum was there on the recording, low and clear and unmistakable. 43 seconds of it. And right before it began, barely audible, captured by the microphone in the hallway, there was a sound that made Claire's blood go cold. A voice. 2 words. She plays it back in the voice memo. She holds her phone up to the laptop speaker and plays it for us. And even through the tinny recording of recording quality, you can hear it. 2 words, barely above a whisper. She's awake. Sunday. The 5th voice memo. Claire sounds like she has not slept, which is because she has not. There are long pauses between sentences. She keeps losing her place and backtracking. But she is not giving up. If anything, the voice on that recording has made her more committed to finding out what's happening. Because there's something about having evidence, even terrifying evidence, that is clarifying. Once it's real, at least you know what you're dealing with. Or you think you do. She tracked down Thomas Greer, the second tenant from 2012 to 2013. It took her most of Sunday morning. She found him through an old Harrow Creek community Facebook group, still active, still full of posts about church events and lost dogs and the occasional complaint about the speed limit on Route 9. He'd posted in the group once in 2013 about a community yard sale, and she sent him a message. He replied within 2 hours. The message he sent back was long, very long, clearly written by someone who had been waiting for someone to ask. He'd been a carpenter, moved to Harrow Creek from Knoxville for work, lived alone in the house on Sutter Lane for 11 months. He said the first 2 months were fine, normal. Objects moved when he hadn't moved them. Food in the refrigerator rearranged. The television turning on by itself at odd hours. He'd assumed electrical issues, old wiring, that sort of thing. He'd called Gary, who'd sent an electrician, who'd found nothing wrong. Then the sounds started. Footsteps at night, just as Claire described. A humming sound, just as she described it, from somewhere in the house that he was never able to locate precisely. And then voices. Whispers, always at night, always just below the threshold of comprehension, always feeling like they were coming from behind the walls. He moved out after 11 months because he couldn't sleep anymore. He'd lost 12 pounds, he said. He'd started having conversations with people in town about what was happening and quickly learned that the way people looked at him when he talked about it was worse than the thing itself. So he stopped talking about it. But here is the part that made Claire stop breathing for a moment. Toward the end of his time in the house, Thomas Greer had found something. In the crawl space, he'd gone down there to fix a pipe fitting, and in the far corner, behind the water heater, he'd found a wooden box. Old, heavy, padlocked. He'd brought it out, forced the lock with a flathead screwdriver. Inside were papers, old, handwritten, on yellowed pages. Some of the pages had symbols he didn't recognize drawn in the margins. He'd taken the box to Gary Pruett, who had gone pale when he saw it, who had taken it immediately and said he'd look into it, who had never mentioned it again. Thomas Greer had moved out 3 weeks after that. Claire stared at her phone screen for a long time after reading his message. Then she replied, "What did you do with the papers? Did Gary take all of them?" Thomas's reply came fast. "Kept one. I don't know why. Something just made me hold one back. I still have it. You want me to photograph it and send it to you?" She said yes. The photo arrived 40 minutes later. A single yellowed page, handwritten in small, dark ink. Most of it was indeed dense and difficult to read, but near the bottom of the page, in cleaner handwriting that looked newer than the rest, as though added later, were 3 lines that were perfectly legible. "She has been here since before the walls were built. She was here when it was only woods. She is not haunting the house. She is enduring it. That night, the 6th night, was the worst." Claire records the 6th memo from inside her bedroom with the door locked, and I want to be clear, she locked herself inside her own bedroom. She'd spent Sunday afternoon at the hardware store in town buying a simple slide bolt and installing it on her bedroom door. She wanted a barrier, even a flimsy one. A locked door is sometimes less about physical security and more about the psychological need to have one thing between you and whatever is out there. She'd also bought a new set of battery-operated motion sensor lights and placed them in the hallway, the kitchen, and the living room. If anything moved through the house, every room would light up. At 2:19 in the morning, every light in the house came on at once. She was already awake. She'd barely been sleeping, just drifting in and out in that shallow way you do when part of your brain refuses to go fully offline. She saw the orange glow of the motion lights bleeding under her bedroom door, and she sat up and grabbed her phone and stared at that thin strip of light. The footsteps started. Slower this time, more deliberate, and there was something else with them. A sound underneath the footsteps, low and rhythmic, that she slowly, sickly, realized was breathing. Measured, steady breathing, the kind of breathing that sounds almost meditative, almost deliberate. The footsteps came to her door and stopped, and she heard it speak. Not a whisper this time, not 2 half-heard words on a recording. A voice, clear, low, and calm, just on the other side of the door, said, "I know you've been asking about me." Claire says she could not move. She sat in her bed in the orange light leaking under her door, and she could not form a thought or a word or any kind of action. The part of your brain that handles basic self-preservation had apparently short-circuited entirely. Then the voice said, The woman before you asked too. They always ask. And then, just barely audible, like an afterthought, like something said to itself rather than to her. It doesn't help them. The footsteps moved away from the door, down the hallway, through the living room, and then she heard the sound that should have been impossible in a sealed and locked house. The sound of the front door opening and closing. She did not move for 2 hours. At 4:30 in the morning, she unlocked her bedroom door and walked through a house that was utterly empty. Every motion sensor light had turned itself off. Every door was locked. Every window latched. The front door's deadbolt was engaged from the inside. She walked to the kitchen and sat down on the floor with her back against the cabinet and stayed there until the sun came up. Monday morning, she drove to the sheriff's department. She knew how this was going to go. She knew because Marla Foss had done it twice before her, and Thomas Greer had done it before that, and presumably Janet Colley too. She knew they would listen politely and check the house and find nothing and look at her with that particular kind of careful, professional neutrality that means we are concerned about you but not for the reasons you think. She went anyway, because at a certain point you stop going for the outcome and you go for the record. You go so that it's documented. You go so that if something happens to you, there's a paper trail. The deputy was a young man, late 20s, courteous and thorough. He came out to the house, walked through every room, checked every point of entry. He found nothing unusual. He suggested the sounds might be the house settling, that old houses in cold weather could do remarkable things. He said the voice she'd heard might have been a dream, or might have been someone outside, kids maybe, being stupid. He said he'd do a patrol of Sutter Lane for the next few nights, though they both knew that wouldn't amount to much. He was writing in his notepad near the end of the visit and asked Claire the name of the previous tenant. She told him Marla Foss. He said yes. He said Marla Foss had filed 2 reports during her time in the house. Same type of complaint, never resolved. Then he said something careful, in a low voice, like he was deciding how official he was willing to be about it. Ms. Alderman, we reached out to Marla Foss's sister in Knoxville about 6 weeks ago, just to make sure she was doing okay. The sister said Marla had never arrived. Claire felt the floor of herself drop away. She said something careful, in a low voice, like he was deciding how official he was willing to be about it. But I think you should consider whether you want to stay in that house. He drove back from the sheriff's department and parked in her driveway and sat in the car for 20 minutes. Thinking. She went inside. She started in the bedroom, then the office, the kitchen, the bathroom. She was in the living room on her hands and knees, looking at the baseboard heaters along the east wall, when she noticed the section of wall behind the wood-burning stove that had always looked slightly different from the rest. She'd seen it before and assumed it was a patch job. Older homes often had sections of plaster that had been repaired at some point and painted over. Slightly different texture, slightly different shade of white. She pressed on it. It gave, just slightly, just enough to feel wrong. She pushed harder. The section of wall flexed inward. She went to the garage and came back with a flathead screwdriver. She worked the edge of the section carefully and it came away as a panel. Not plaster at all, but a thin wooden panel painted to match the wall. Behind it was a void about 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall, a narrow space between the interior and exterior walls. Inside was a wooden box, padlocked. She stared at it for a very long time. She forced the lock. It took the better part of 20 minutes, but she forced it. The box was full of papers, but not the same papers Thomas Greer had found in the crawl space. These were different. These were organized, bundled in groups and tied with old twine. The top bundle was the most recent, and when she unfolded the top page her breath caught, because the handwriting on it was not old at all. The handwriting on it was recent, maybe months old, and the name at the top of the page was Marla Foss. Claire reads portions of Marla's notes in her voice memo, and I want to share some of what she read, because this is where the story stops being a haunted house story in the way you might be imagining it and becomes something stranger and more difficult to name. It doesn't haunt this place the way a spirit haunts. It inhabits. It has settled into this land the way water settles into limestone, flowing into every crack, becoming part of the structure. She had researched the land, pre-colonial history of the Cumberland Plateau, indigenous accounts of the region, which she'd found through academic sources. And she'd found references, scattered, indirect, but there, to a concept in the folklore of the region describing certain places in the deep woods where the boundary between the living world and something older was thin. The Cumberland Plateau is one of the oldest exposed rock surfaces in eastern North America. Geologically ancient, and Marla had found a pattern in the accounts she'd read. A consistent detail across different sources from different periods. In some of the deep hollow places of the plateau, things persisted. Things that were old in a way that made human history look like a blink. Things that did not mean harm, necessarily. Things that simply were and had been and continued to be. And that the presence of humans in those places was registered by those things the way you might register a leaf landing on still water, noticed, observed, responded to. Not maliciously, but not comfortably either. Marla wrote, "I don't think it wants to hurt me. I think it wants me to understand that I am in its place. That I have built walls in the middle of something that does not recognize walls. And that it will still be here long after the walls are gone and long after I am gone. And it knows this. And when I lie awake at night and I hear it moving through my house, I think the most terrifying thing is not its presence. It's what its presence implies. That everything we build, everything we call ours, is temporary, borrowed, and not from each other. From something much, much older that doesn't bother to think of it as ownership because it doesn't have to." The final entry in Marla's notes was dated April 3rd of this year, 6 months before Claire moved in. It was 3 sentences. "I have decided to go further into the hollow tonight. I want to see where it came from. I want to see the place before the house, before the road, before everything we put here. If I am right about what it is, it won't hurt me. If I am wrong, I won't be able to report back." Claire is quiet for a very long time in the voice memo after she finishes reading that. When she speaks again, her voice is calm, steady, and there's something in it that I find more frightening than any of the sounds and footsteps and voices she's described. A kind of acceptance. It comes from having arrived at the far end of fear and finding that on the other side of it is something clear and cold and permanent. She says, "I went into the hollow tonight." She says, "I want to tell you what I found." And then there is a very long pause on the recording. Long enough that you start to think the memo has cut out or she's set the phone down. And then she speaks again, and what she says is this: "The woods are not dark the way I expected. There's a quality to the light, and I know this doesn't make sense because it's 2 in the morning, there's no moon, but there's a quality to the light between the trees that's hard to describe. Like the trees themselves are faintly luminous. Or like I'm seeing by some other sense and just interpreting it as light because I don't have better words for it. I went maybe a quarter mile in. There's a place where the ground drops down into a hollow, and there's a creek at the bottom, and the creek is very still. There's no sound. There's no sound. I know that sounds impossible for a moving body of water, but there's no sound. And the air in the hollow feels different, thicker, not oppressive, just present. Like the air itself is aware. And I stood there at the edge of the hollow and I realized I wasn't afraid. And that, in itself, was the most frightening thing that's happened to me in this whole experience, because I should have been afraid. I was standing alone in the woods at 2 in the morning at the bottom of a hill in the dark, and I was not afraid. And the reason I was not afraid was that whatever is in that house, whatever moves through those rooms at night, it was all around me in that hollow. And it was so large, so old, so pervasive, that being afraid of it would be like being afraid of the bedrock. It was simply too fundamental to fear. I thought about Marla. I looked around in the dark for some sign of her. Does that make sense? Some evidence that she'd been here. I didn't find anything. I hope that means she found her way through. I hope that means she went further and came out somewhere else. Somewhere on the other side of whatever this thing is, and she's living quietly and well and doesn't need to look back. I'm not sure that's true, but it's what I hope. Here's what I know. I know the thing in my house is not going away. I know it was there before the house was built, and it will be there after the house is gone. I know that it isn't evil. I don't think that framing applies to something this old. I think it's just present, and our presence registers to it, and it responds to us the way something vast and old and unknowable responds to small temporary things, with attention. And I know I know this now, standing in this hollow, in this impossible almost light, that Marla Foss understood this too. That she came to the same place and the same understanding, and she chose to go further. I'm not going to do that. I want to be clear about that. I'm going to walk back to my house and I'm going to go to sleep, and in the morning I'm going to call my sister and talk to her for an hour. Because the thing about being reminded that everything human is temporary and borrowed is that it makes you want the human things more, not less. It makes you want the voices of people you love. It makes you want coffee and morning light and the sound of your own name said by someone who knows you. But I'm also going to stay in that house. Because leaving doesn't change anything. Whatever is there will be there whether I'm in it or not. Maybe Marla thought this too, but maybe the way to live with something that ancient and something that vast is to simply live. Quietly, humbly, with an awareness of what you're standing on and what was here before you and what will be here when you're gone. Maybe that's not wisdom. Maybe it's just what I need to believe right now. It's almost 3 in the morning and I need to get back. The hollow is very still. But as I was standing here, just a minute ago, just before I started recording, I heard something behind me. Not footsteps, not a voice, a sound I don't have a word for, like the sound a very old stone makes when the temperature changes. Like the sound of the deep earth, shifting barely, almost imperceptibly. Long silence. It was just the trees. Another silence. I think it was just the trees. The recording cuts out there. We reached out to Claire after receiving the voice memos. Took 3 days to get a response. When she finally replied to our email, she was brief. She said she was fine. She said she was staying in the house on Sutter Lane. She said she'd been sleeping better than she had in years, which she acknowledged sounded strange given everything. She said the sounds at night continued but had changed in character. More like coexistence. Her word, coexistence. She said she'd asked around town about Marla Foss again. Different questions this time. Not what happened to her, but what was she like? What she found, talking to Deb and Phyllis and a few others, was that Marla Foss had been, before those last frightened months, a warm and curious and deeply alive person. Someone who loved the town and loved the landscape and had wanted, genuinely, to belong to a place again after loss. She said that mattered to her. That knowing who Marla had been before the fear mattered. She did not explain why. We asked her if she wanted us to share the 2-word audio recording. The "she's awake." She said yes. She said she'd thought about it and decided the most frightening things should be heard, because the only things more frightening than the ones you hear are the ones that go unacknowledged. She asked us to end with this. The woods around Harrow Creek are very old. Older than the town, older than the roads, older than the people who named the creek and the hollow and the ridge. And there are things in old places that have no name and need no name and will outlast the names we give everything else. I don't think that should make us afraid. I think it should make us careful, and honest, and a little humble about what we imagine we own. I think that's what Marla was trying to learn. I think she may have learned it. I hope she found her way back from the hollow. I haven't been back to look. I don't think I will. Some questions are better left at the edge of the trees. We never heard from Claire Alderman again after that email. We tried once more 3 weeks later. The email bounced. The address no longer existed. We contacted the Harrow Creek post office and asked if they could pass a letter to the woman renting the house on Sutter Lane. The postmaster said that house had been vacant for 2 months. He said the woman who'd been renting it had left unexpectedly. Said she'd taken a job in another state. Said it real fast, like he'd rehearsed it. That's tonight's story, from Harrow Creek, Tennessee. From a woman who walked into the woods at 2 in the morning and came back with an answer that was somehow worse than the question. If tonight's story got under your skin, and I genuinely hope it did, subscribe to Scary Show for more terrifying tales sent in by listeners from all across the country. Every week we bring you voices like Claire's. People who experienced something they couldn't explain and chose to tell someone about it. Because that impulse, the need to tell, might be the most human thing there is. Share this video with someone who won't be sleeping well tonight anyway. Leave a comment if you want to talk about it. And if you have a story of your own, something you heard, something you found, something that happened in a house you couldn't stay in, Our email is in the description. We'll listen. We always listen. And the next time you're standing at the edge of the trees at night, and you hear something behind you that you can't quite explain, don't turn around too quickly. Whatever it is, it's been there a long, long time. Can wait.